Dr. Emily Ross wiped sweat from her forehead as she stepped out of the transport shuttle onto the rocky surface of Kepler 442c. The barren moon stretched endlessly in all directions, its gray landscape broken only by jagged crystal formations that jutted from the ground like frozen lightning. 3 days ago, long-range sensors had picked up strange energy readings from this dead world. Now Emily and her small team were here to find out what was causing them. Captain Jake Williams checked his scanner one more time before nodding to Emily. Energy signature is definitely coming from underground, document. About 2 clicks northeast. His weathered face showed the kind of caution that came from 20 years of military service in deep space. Behind him, Dr. Michael Grant struggled with his equipment pack, clearly more comfortable in a laboratory than trudging across alien terrain. Any idea what we're looking for? Michael asked, his voice slightly muffled by his environmental suit's comm system. Emily shook her head. Could be anything. Ancient ruins, crashed ships, natural phenomena. That's why we're here. She had spent her entire career studying the remains of long-dead civilizations scattered across the galaxy. Each discovery taught humanity something new about the vast universe they were slowly exploring. The walk took them across broken ground and around towering crystal spires that hummed with faint energy. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, though her scanners showed no signs of life anywhere on the moon. After an hour of careful hiking, they found it, a perfectly smooth entrance carved into the side of a crystal mountain, its edges glowing with soft blue light. Well, that's definitely not natural, Jake muttered, raising his rifle slightly. Military training never really left a person, Emily thought. The entrance led them into a tunnel that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. The walls were covered in symbols that Emily had never seen before, though something about their flowing curves felt oddly familiar. Her translation device couldn't make sense of them, which meant they were either too old or too alien for the database. The energy readings are off the charts, Michael whispered, his eyes wide as he stared at his instruments. Whatever's down here has been active for a very long time. They walked deeper into the complex, their footsteps echoing strangely in the crystalline corridors. Emergency lighting flickered on as they passed, suggesting the facility still had power after who knew how many years. Emily felt her heart racing with excitement. This could be the discovery of a lifetime. The tunnel opened into a chamber so vast that their lights couldn't reach the far walls. In the center, surrounded by a maze of control panels and monitoring equipment, stood something that made all 3 humans stop dead in their tracks. It was enormous, easily the size of a small building. The creature had 4 powerful legs, massive wings folded against its sides, and a long serpentine neck that curved gracefully upward. Scales covered its body in patterns that seemed to shift and change in their lights. But what made Emily gasp was its face, intelligent eyes, large as dinner plates, that tracked their movement with obvious awareness. Is that? Michael's voice trailed off. A dragon, Emily whispered. An actual dragon. But this wasn't some fantasy creature from old Earth stories. This being radiated an aura of ancient power and wisdom that made Emily feel like a child in comparison. And it was clearly not from any world humans had ever discovered. The creature was held in place by chains unlike anything Emily had ever seen. They weren't made of metal or any physical material. Instead, they appeared to be constructed from pure energy that pulsed with dark, angry light. The chains wrapped around the being's legs, wings, and neck, keeping it perfectly still but obviously alive. Jake kept his weapon ready but didn't aim it directly at the creature. Doc, we need to call this in immediately. This is way beyond our mission parameters. Emily approached one of the still-functioning control panels, her hands shaking as she accessed the ancient computer system. The interface was alien but somehow intuitive, responding to her touch with streams of data that her translation software slowly began to decode. It's been here for over 3,000 years, she said, reading the scrolling text. Imprisoned by something called the Colonial Authority Oversight Division. She paused, frowning. That doesn't sound like any organization I've heard of. More data flowed across the screen, including a designation that made her blood run cold, entity classification, Omega class threat. Indefinite containment authorized. Termination protocols available if containment fails. As if sensing her distress, the dragon's massive head turned toward her. Those ancient eyes met hers, and Emily saw something that the official records had completely missed. This wasn't a monster or a threat. This was a thinking, feeling being that had been locked away for millennia. And despite its impossible size and obvious power, she could see pain and loneliness in its gaze that made her heart ache. The creature made no aggressive moves, issued no threatening sounds. It simply watched her with what Emily could only describe as hope. Emily stared at the ceiling of her temporary quarters, unable to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those ancient, pain-filled eyes looking back at her. The official reports were already being filed, and she knew what would happen next. Colonel David Harper would classify the discovery, lock down the site, and probably order the creature destroyed as a potential threat to human expansion in this sector. She couldn't let that happen. The next morning, Emily made an excuse about needing to collect additional geological samples. Dr. Lisa Chen, the mission's xenobiologist, gave her a suspicious look over their morning coffee. "Emily, you're not thinking of going back there alone, are you?" Lisa asked, her voice filled with concern. "The contamination protocols alone should keep you away. We have no idea what kind of biological hazards that thing might carry." "Its name is Veilthes," Emily said quietly, surprising herself. Somehow, during the night, that name had appeared in her mind as clearly as if someone had whispered it to her. Lisa nearly choked on her coffee. "Its name? Emily, you can't start thinking of that creature as a person. It's an unknown alien life form that's been classified as an extreme threat." Colonel Harper specifically ordered no further contact until the military assessment team arrives next week. But Emily was already packing her field kit. Along with her usual equipment, she carefully placed a thermos filled with homemade chicken noodle soup, her mother's recipe that had comforted her through countless childhood illnesses and adult heartbreaks. She wasn't sure why she thought soup might help an ancient alien being, but something deep inside told her it was the right thing to do. The walk back to the crystal complex felt different in the pale morning light. The energy readings seemed calmer somehow, less chaotic than the day before. Emily wondered if the creature, Veilthes, somehow knew she was coming. Inside the vast chamber, nothing had changed. Veilthes remained motionless in the center of the energy chains, but those intelligent eyes immediately focused on Emily as she entered. This time, she approached without hesitation, walking right up to where the creature's massive head rested near the floor. "Hello again," she said softly, feeling slightly foolish for talking to what everyone else considered a dangerous monster. "I brought you something." She unscrewed the thermos cap, and the rich smell of chicken broth filled the air. Veilthes's nostrils flared slightly, and Emily could swear she saw curiosity in those ancient eyes. "I know this probably seems strange," Emily continued, carefully pouring some soup into the thermos cap. "But where I come from, when someone is hurting, we bring them soup. It's just something we do." She held the small cup toward the creature's massive mouth, half expecting to be ignored. Instead, Veilthes carefully extended a tongue that was surprisingly gentle and delicate despite its size. The creature tasted the soup cautiously at first, then with obvious appreciation. Emily found herself smiling as she poured more. "This was my mother's recipe," she said, settling cross-legged on the crystal floor as if she were having lunch with an old friend. "She used to make it whenever I was sick or sad. She said the secret ingredient was love, though I think it was actually the extra bay leaves she added." As Veilthes continued to drink the soup, Emily found herself talking about things she rarely shared with anyone. She told the ancient being about Earth's changing seasons, how snow looked falling on her hometown in winter, and how her grandmother's garden smelled in spring. She described summer thunderstorms and autumn leaves, the way coffee tasted on cold mornings, and how humans celebrated birthdays by giving gifts to others. "We're not a perfect species," Emily admitted, refilling the thermos cap again. "We fight too much, and we're often scared of things we don't understand. But we also try to take care of each other. At least, the good ones do." Something extraordinary began to happen as Emily spoke. The energy chains around Veilthes, which had pulsed with angry red light the day before, began to flicker. Occasionally, they would dim to almost nothing before flaring back to life, as if struggling to maintain their hold. Veilthes seemed to grow more alert with each sip of soup, and Emily began to sense something she couldn't quite explain, a presence in her mind that felt warm and grateful. Not intrusive or threatening, just present. Like sitting next to someone who understood exactly what you were feeling without needing to explain. The creature hadn't consumed anything but the raw energy from its prison in thousands of years. The simple act of receiving nourishment freely given, with no demands or expectations attached, was awakening something that had been dormant for millennia. In all of Veilthes's long life, spanning eons of galactic history, this small human was the first being to offer kindness simply because it was the right thing to do. As Emily packed up her empty thermos, she placed her hand gently on one of Veilthes's scales. The surface was warm and surprisingly smooth, almost like polished stone. "I'll come back tomorrow," she promised. "And I'll figure out how to help you properly." The presence in her mind pulsed with something that felt unmistakably like hope. Emily was just finishing her evening report when her communicator crackled to life. Tom Bradley's panicked voice cut through the static, making her drop her coffee mug. "Dr. Ross, you need to get down here right now. Something's happening at that alien site. The energy readings are going completely crazy." Tom was the kind of maintenance technician who had seen everything during his 15 years working on remote research stations. Nothing rattled him anymore. The fact that his voice was shaking made Emily's blood run cold. "What kind of readings?" Emily asked, already grabbing her equipment pack and rushing toward the exit. "The whole grid is fluctuating like nothing I've ever seen before. Power spikes, then complete drops, then spikes again. It's like something down there is waking up." Tom's voice crackled with interference. "And Doc, the quantum containment system is showing failure warnings." Emily's heart skipped a beat. The quantum chains holding Veilthes were supposed to be unbreakable. The ancient technology had held the creature prisoner for 3,000 years without so much as a flicker. If they were failing now, just hours after her visit with the soup. She commandeered a transport vehicle and raced across the moon's surface, pushing the small craft to its maximum speed. The crystal formations that dotted the landscape seemed to be glowing brighter than usual, pulsing in rhythm with some unseen heartbeat. Even from a distance, she could see strange lights dancing around the entrance to the underground complex. Tom met her at the facility entrance, his face pale and his hands shaking as he held his scanner. "It started about 2 hours ago, right around sunset. Look at these readings." He showed her the display, and Emily's eyes widened. The energy output was fluctuating wildly, but there was a pattern to it, like breathing, or a slow, steady pulse. They descended into the complex together, and Emily immediately noticed the difference. The corridor walls, which had glowed with steady blue light during her previous visits, now flickered and pulsed. Some sections were brighter than ever, while others had dimmed to almost nothing. The air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained power. "Stay back," Emily warned Tom as they approached the main chamber. "If those containment systems are really failing, we don't know what might happen." But when they reached the vast chamber, Emily gasped at what she saw. The energy chains that had bound Veilthes for millennia were flickering like dying light bulbs. Some sections had become almost transparent, while others sparked and hissed as they struggled to maintain their hold. The dragon-like being was no longer completely motionless, its head was raised, and those ancient eyes were alert and focused in a way they hadn't been before. "The quantum matrix is destabilizing," Tom whispered, staring at his readings. "Doc, this technology is beyond anything humans have ever built. How is it possible that it's just breaking down?" Emily approached slowly, her heart pounding. As she got closer to Veilthes, she began to hear something that made her stop dead in her tracks. Not with her ears, but inside her mind, a voice as ancient as the stars themselves, speaking directly to her thoughts. "The chains were not designed to contain my body," the voice said, warm and patient despite the obvious pain behind it. "They were built to contain my spirit, to feed on despair and loneliness. For 3,000 years, they have grown strong on my isolation." Emily looked up at Veilthes's massive face, and the creature's eyes met hers with unmistakable intelligence and sadness. "But yesterday, for the first time in millennia, someone showed me kindness without wanting anything in return. Pure compassion, given freely." The telepathic voice grew stronger as more chain links flickered and dissolved. "Your species calls it empathy, but it operates at levels your scientists do not yet understand. It resonates through the quantum field itself." Tom stepped backward, his scanner beeping frantically. "Doc, whatever's happening, it's accelerating. The containment field is down to 60% power and dropping." Emily found that she could respond to Veilthes's telepathic communication simply by thinking clearly in its direction. "You were never really dangerous, were you? The records were wrong. I was imprisoned not because I threatened your people, but because I refused to use my abilities to help the colonial authority conquer other worlds. My kind can reshape reality itself when we choose to, but I would not become a weapon of oppression." The ancient being's mental voice carried centuries of pain and regret. The chains were designed by those who understood that the greatest prison is not physical bonds, but the slow death of hope itself. As if responding to this revelation, another section of the quantum chain simply vanished, dissolving into sparks of fading light. Veilthes flexed one massive wing for the first time in thousands of years, and the movement sent ripples of energy through the chamber. "The soup," Emily whispered, understanding flooding through her. "It wasn't just food. It was the first genuine act of care you'd experienced in 3,000 years." "Your mother's recipe," Veilthes replied, and Emily could swear she heard warmth and even humor in the telepathic voice. Made with love, freely given to a stranger who could offer nothing in return. Such pure compassion creates quantum resonances that no prison can contain. More chains flickered and died, and Tom grabbed Emily's arm. "Doc, we need to get out of here. If this thing breaks completely free." But Emily shook her head, never breaking eye contact with Veilthes. "It's not going to hurt us, Tom. Are you?" she asked the ancient being directly. "Never," came the immediate reply. "Your species showed me that hope still exists in this galaxy. I would die before bringing harm to those who carry such light in their hearts." The last of the quantum chains dissolved in a shower of golden sparks, and Veilthes stood fully upright for the first time in 3 millennia, stretching wings that spanned the entire width of the massive chamber. The dragon was free. As Veilthes stretched its magnificent wings for the first time in 3,000 years, Emily felt the ancient being's strength returning like a tide rolling in. The telepathic connection between them grew clearer and stronger with each passing moment, allowing her to sense the dragon's thoughts and emotions with startling clarity. "There is much you do not know about your own species," Veilthes communicated, its mental voice now rich with renewed power. "Sit with me, young one. Let me share truths that have been hidden from humanity for far too long." Emily found herself settling onto the crystal floor beside the massive creature, while Tom remained near the chamber entrance, still clutching his scanner and looking overwhelmed by everything he was witnessing. The facility's lighting had stabilized now that the quantum chains were gone, bathing everything in a soft, peaceful glow. "Your people believe they are relatively new to the galaxy," Veilthes continued, lowering its great head closer to Emily's level. "You think Earth is your original home, that humans evolved in isolation until you developed space travel. This is not entirely true." Images began flowing through the telepathic link, ancient star maps, scenes of vast cities among the clouds, and beings that looked remarkably like humans but with subtle differences in their features and bearing. Emily gasped as she realized what she was seeing. Long ago, there was a species called the Terrans, not the same as modern humans, but your direct ancestors. They possessed something extraordinary that made them unique among all the intelligent races in the galaxy. Veilthes paused, and Emily sensed the dragon was choosing its words carefully. Their minds operated on quantum frequencies that made them naturally resistant to psychic influence and control. "What does that mean exactly?" Emily asked, though part of her was already beginning to understand. Most species can be dominated by sufficiently powerful telepathic beings. Their thoughts can be read, their wills can be overridden, their memories can be altered. But Terrans, and by extension, modern humans, have minds that exist partially outside normal spacetime. You cannot be controlled against your will by psychic powers. The implications hit Emily like a physical blow. "That's why you were able to reach out to me specifically, isn't it? Not just because I happen to be nearby, but because I'm human." "Precisely. 4 months, as my strength faded and the chains weakened slightly, I sent out desperate calls across space, hoping against hope that some member of your species might hear and respond. You were not here by accident, Emily Ross. You were drawn here by my need and your people's unique nature." Tom's communicator suddenly burst to life with urgent chatter from the base station. Emily caught fragments of the transmission, something about unauthorized fleet movements and immediate evacuation protocols. Tom's face went pale as he listened. "Doc, we've got major trouble incoming. Admiral Rebecca Stone is approaching with a full Colonial Authority battle group. ETA less than 2 hours." Emily frowned. She'd never heard of Admiral Stone, and the Colonial Authority was supposed to be a civilian organization focused on exploration and research, not military operations. "The Colonial Authority is not what it appears to be," Veilthes said, clearly picking up on her confusion. "It is the successor to the organization that imprisoned me. They have spent centuries carefully managing humanity's development, keeping your species isolated and technologically limited." "Why would they do that?" Emily demanded, anger rising in her chest. "Because they fear you. The ancient Terrans allied with my people, the Draconics, to oppose the galactic powers that sought to enslave other species. Together, we were unstoppable. Their quantum-resistant minds combined with our reality-shaping abilities created a force that championed freedom across the stars." More images flowed through their connection, massive space battles, planets being liberated from oppressive rulers, and scenes of different species working together in harmony under the protection of the Terran-Draconic Alliance. "What happened to them? To the original Terrans?" Emily asked, though she suspected the answer would be painful. "They were betrayed by those they trusted. A coalition of galactic powers convinced some Terran leaders that the Draconics were too dangerous to be allies. Civil war broke out, and in the chaos, both species were scattered across the galaxy. The surviving Terrans were relocated to a remote world called Earth, their memories altered, their technology stripped away. Emily felt sick. So humanity's entire history is a lie? We're refugees who don't even remember who we really are. Not refugees, survivors. And now, after all this time, the old powers have realized that humans are beginning to rediscover their true nature. They cannot allow that to happen. Tom's communicator crackled again with more urgent reports. Admiral Stone's fleet had changed course and was now heading directly for their location at maximum speed. They're coming to eliminate both of us, Veilthes said calmly. As long as I exist, I represent the possibility that humans might remember their true heritage. And as long as you exist as living proof that the human-draconic bond can be re-established, their centuries of control are threatened. Emily stood up, her mind racing. She looked at Tom, who was staring at her with wide eyes, clearly having heard enough of the conversation to understand the enormity of what was happening. So what do we do? She asked. We can't fight our entire fleet. You have a choice to make, Emily Ross, Veilthes replied. You can return to your base, claim that I escaped and disappeared, and go back to your old life. The colonial authority will likely leave you alone if you remain silent about what you've learned. Or you can help me reach Earth and begin awakening your people to their true nature. But understand, if you choose this path, there will be no going back. You will become an enemy of the most powerful forces in the galaxy, and your life will never be simple again. Emily looked up at the ancient dragon, then at Tom, who despite his fear was nodding slowly at her. Doc, Tom said quietly, I don't understand half of what I just heard, but I know one thing for sure. These people have been lying to us our whole lives. That's not okay. Emily smiled, feeling a surge of determination flow through her. Then I guess we're going to give Admiral Stone a surprise she wasn't expecting. Veilthes's mental voice rumbled with something that sounded remarkably like laughter. Spoken like a true descendant of the Terrans. Very well, Emily Ross. Let us remind the galaxy what happens when humans and dragons work together. The ancient chamber began to glow as Veilthes prepared to use powers that had been dormant for 3 millennia. The ground beneath their feet began to shake as Admiral Stone's fleet entered the moon's atmosphere. Through the facility's ancient monitoring systems, Emily watched dozens of sleek military vessels descending like angry wasps, their weapons already charging for combat. She had maybe 20 minutes before they reached the crystal complex. Tom, get on the comm and tell everyone at base to evacuate immediately, Emily ordered, her mind racing through possibilities. Tell them there's been a massive containment breach and the whole site is going critical. Tom nodded and began frantically calling the research station while Emily turned her attention to Veilthes. The ancient dragon was standing at full height now, power radiating from its massive form in waves that made the air itself shimmer. Can you actually fight all those ships? Emily asked through their telepathic link. I have abilities that these modern vessels were not designed to counter, Veilthes replied. But they have numbers and advanced weapons. I will need your help. Your unpredictable human thinking combined with my power might give us a chance. Pilot Officer Ryan Murphy's voice suddenly crackled through Tom's communicator. Base to survey team, we're showing massive energy signatures at your location and multiple hostile contacts incoming. I'm launching in the transport shuttle for emergency pickup. Emily grabbed Tom's comm unit. Ryan, stay away from the facility. Get our people out of here, but don't come looking for us. We're going to try something crazy. Doc, I'm not leaving you down there with. That's an order, Murphy. Emily cut him off. Get everyone to safety and prepare for immediate departure from the moon. The first wave of Colonial Authority fighters screamed overhead, their engines drowning out any response from Ryan. Through the facility's sensors, Emily watched them take attack positions around the crystal complex, surrounding it completely. They're not taking any chances, she muttered, then looked up at Veilthes. What's our move? Trust me, and be ready to think like the tactical genius your species is capable of being, the dragon replied. Suddenly, Veilthes's eyes blazed with golden light, and reality around them began to shift. The walls of the chamber became transparent, giving Emily a perfect view of the battle forming outside. She gasped as she realized she could see through solid rock as if it were glass. Reality manipulation, Veilthes explained casually. One of our more useful abilities. The Colonial Authority ships opened fire, sending streams of plasma and particle beams toward the facility. But instead of impacting the crystal structure, the weapon's fire simply passed through it as if the entire complex no longer existed in normal space. Admiral Stone's voice boomed through external speakers on her flagship. Surrender the entity and the contaminated human immediately. You are harboring a Class Omega threat to galactic security. Emily felt anger surge through her at being called contaminated. Through their link, Veilthes sensed her emotions and responded with something that felt like grim satisfaction. Now, Emily. Show them what human ingenuity can accomplish. Emily studied the attack formation through their shared vision, her archaeologist's mind automatically analyzing patterns and weaknesses. They are positioned for a siege, not for a mobile target. What if we don't stay here and fight? Explain. Can you make us invisible to their senses while keeping the facility phased out of normal space? For a time, yes. Emily grinned. Then we don't fight their ships. We go after their command structure directly. What happened next would be talked about in hushed whispers throughout the Colonial Authority fleet for years to come. The crystal facility simply vanished from all senses, and in its place, reality began to warp in ways that defied every law of physics the pilots understood. Veilthes carried Emily through folded space directly to Admiral Stone's flagship, phasing them both through the hull as if it were made of mist. They materialized on the bridge, where Emily found herself face to face with a stern woman in military uniform whose eyes widened in shock at their impossible arrival. Admiral Stone, I presume, Emily said conversationally, while around them bridge officers scrambled for weapons that couldn't possibly harm a being that existed partially outside normal reality. You have no idea what you're dealing with, the Admiral snarled. That creature has corrupted your mind. You're no longer human. Actually, I'm more human than I've ever been, Emily replied. Thanks to Veilthes, I'm finally understanding what humanity was meant to become. The dragon's telepathic voice reached every mind on the bridge simultaneously, bypassing their mental defenses with ease. Stand down your weapons and recall your fleet. This war ends now. We will never surrender to alien influence, Admiral Stone declared, reaching for her sidearm. Emily stepped forward, her voice calm but carrying absolute authority. Then let me show you what real human-alien cooperation looks like. She placed her hand on Veilthes's scaled foreleg, and suddenly the telepathic connection between them exploded outward, reaching every ship in the fleet simultaneously. For the first time in millennia, humans across the battle group felt their dormant quantum abilities awakening. They could sense each other's thoughts, feel the web of connection that linked all conscious beings, and understand with perfect clarity that they had been lied to about their own nature. One by one, the Colonial Authority ships powered down their weapons as their crews experienced the awakening of abilities they never knew they possessed. 3 months later, Emily stood before the United Nations General Assembly in New York, with Veilthes coiled majestically behind the podium. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting rainbow patterns across the dragon scales as delegates from every nation on Earth listened in stunned silence. Ladies and gentlemen, Emily began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, today marks the beginning of humanity's return to our true place in the galaxy. Not as conquerors or subjects, but as the peacekeepers we were always meant to be. Through their permanent telepathic bond, she could feel Veilthes's satisfaction as humans around the world began to demonstrate their awakened abilities. Children were the first to adapt, naturally forming mental connections with each other and with the increasing number of alien species who had begun arriving on Earth seeking the protection that only quantum-resistant humans could provide. The road ahead won't be easy, Emily continued, looking out at the faces of world leaders who were still struggling to accept this new reality. But we're not walking it alone anymore. We have allies who have waited thousands of years for us to remember who we really are. Veilthes's mental voice touched every mind in the assembly with gentle warmth. Together, we will build a galaxy where compassion is stronger than fear, where understanding bridges the gaps between species, and where a simple act of kindness, like sharing soup with a lonely prisoner, can change the fate of worlds. Emily smiled, remembering that moment in the crystal chamber when everything began. Sometimes the smallest gestures really could shatter the strongest chains, and sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was simply one person choosing to be kind to another, regardless of what they looked like or where they came from. The age of human isolation was over. The age of galactic cooperation had begun.